You're listening to Mondays Unfiltered, the podcast for anyone who's accepted that work is inevitably work. We're your hosts, Heather and Kristin. We break down burnout, baffling policies, and corporate chaos with dry humor and real solutions. Grab your coffee and whatever optimism survived the weekend, Mondays have begun. A little about us. Chris spent decades helping executives shape brands and craft messages that inspire, and I built systems that actually made those visions work behind the scenes and kept people from falling apart in the process. Thanks for joining us today.
Welcome back to Mondays Unfiltered. It's been a while, Heather. A
It
week.
has. I'm so
Only a
happy
week.
to see you. I'm so happy
Oh,
to see
me
you.
too. Me too. And I think you got your hair done, didn't
I
you? Did you
did.
get a haircut? It's very cute, very
Yes.
sassy.
Thank you.
So I think we are going to talk about a really favorite subject
Mm,
for probably a lot of people. I've been hearing a lot of folks, and I'm sure you have too, either my clients or former colleagues telling me how stressed and worried they are. We keep reading articles about layoffs, having to do more with less, extra pressure, but generally bad behavior and
yeah.
expectations at work.
Which
So I
is
think we're
not
going
an
to talk
uncommon
about that
topic
today.
with us. And it's unfortunate that it's so popular, that it's a
Yeah,
topic of people's conversations regularly. Let's eliminate it. Let's figure out how to get rid of that.
right. Well, that's one reason why, Heather and I found each other as sort of work soulmates, so to speak, is we were commiserating, about these things. And it is one of our favorite topics and why we went into consulting and coaching because we really wanted to help improve things. So let me kick this off because the other day I had to watch Office Space. I hadn't seen it, the movie. I hadn't watched it in a long time. It was so funny. And I think I
I
even
love that
texted you.
movie.
I know. And so I think everybody's familiar with the plot, but I'll remind everybody they're doing layoffs and the employees are kind of wise to it. It's a software company and the companies kind of get wind that these consultants, the bobs, are coming in to look at efficiency. And so today's quote from the movie is when, let me find it. um and I love this, when Peter Gibbons is sitting down with the bobs and they're asking him what he does in a normal day. And if you remember correctly, he's been the night before he'd been hypnotized and he kind of had a devil may care attitude. So, he's tired of the TPS reports, of getting hounded, of being called in on the weekends. And we have a story later to share that's just heinous that we recently read. So he says, that's my only real motivation is not to be hassled. That and the fear of losing my job. But Bob, that'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired. So that basically sums up an attitude I think both of us are seeing from our clients, our corporate clients that we consult with, and friends and family. And you can see it, every week you see that there's more and more layoffs,
Yeah.
and so there's more and more pressure that are staying there. Um,
Well, and that's
and
burnout. Like that's a perfect description of burnout. And like you pointed out, I was going to make sure that we talked about it. He didn't even get to he would, I don't know that he would have even said that to them had he not been hypnotized to not
right.
care. Because I think, if he were just to go in as himself, he might not have said anything, or he might have responded hostily. Where in this scenario, he was just like very matter of fact and like gave it to him straight, but he had to be hypnotized in order to be in that persona.
Which the Bobs found refreshing,
Yes.
is to have him
And
be
they
so
should promote
transparent.
him.
I know. So, I keep telling my clients that there is a way to communicate challenges, that you don't have to be so worried. And, we operate in such a fear mechanism
Yes.
that, that's something that I work with my clients on from an empowerment perspective. But because I do believe that, and you and I have the same philosophy, is don't bitch and moan.
Right.
Just find
Well,
a
you
way
can as
to
long as there's an
communicate.
alternative solution. So, like,
Correct.
go ahead and complain, but what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. Make a suggestion, but don't be afraid to speak up. Although what I've been hearing is that a lot of like senior leaders and senior managers are kind of checked out and they're also
Mm.
stressed out. And so they don't want to hear anything. But I think to your point, people like to hear solutions as opposed to, just bitching and moaning. Um, it's kind of interesting that, I watched that movie. We're going to share a really sad, real article of someone writing
Real
into
world.
US, real world article. Somebody wrote into USA Today in a second, but it was fortuitous because in my inbox, I got the report from the Gallup. They do an annual report on employee engagement. And so their recent report came out, and I will link it in the description, that in 2024, the global percentage of engaged employees fell from 23% to 21%. Now, that 2% doesn't sound like a lot, but what they said, this costs the worldwide economy $438 billion in lost productivity.
Mm.
And they have a whole bunch of stuff in that report that they're talking about and why the engagement is so bad. Um, so there's post-pandemic retirements and turnover, layoffs, hiring bust and boom, restructuring teams and departments, shrinking budgets. That's a common one. Come in on Saturdays and Sundays because we laid off the team. That's from Office Space. Disrupted supply chain, higher customer expectations, digital transformation, and AI tools. Talk about that at the end. A quote from the Gallup CEO. And people are trying to replace employees with AI tools. Not so smart if you don't do it.
Unsuccessfully replaced.
Yes, unsuccessfully correct. There's some hints about productivity and using AI tools, but you still have to have employee engagement. So there's a lot of reasons for this. So Heather and I, every week are kind of combing, you know, the ethos for stories that we can actually share. And this one, a woman wrote in, and I don't remember who it was to USA Today, and she said she was pregnant, had a planned delivery, and unfortunately, as often happens, baby decides to come early where she had some challenges, some complications, and she had to go into the hospital and be admitted, and she had to have a C-section. And I believe it was after several hours of trying to deliver naturally. So she ended up delivering via C-section and was exhausted, had the baby. The baby was premature, and they had to put the baby in the NICU. And for any ladies that have had C-sections, they know, well, having a baby is a big deal anyways, period, right? It's
Right.
a huge honorable thing to do, not honorable thing, and that's not the way I mean it. It's a significant life event,
Yes.
and it should be honored. But she was in the hospital and her manager was asking her to call. I don't know whether it was to call in for a meeting, to call in and do
I think
work.
she had said that she wouldn't be in because she gave an emergency delivery. And they were talking to her about the time off, like she'd have to submit time off, and it was going back and forth, and they were like, let's just talk it directly in it. And they got on a Zoom call. First of all, she just gave birth and she got on a Zoom call. I would have been like, not a chance. There's no way
Call
I would have done that.
myself. We can.
Be like, talk to my husband or figure it out. Like, is the company going to collapse because I gave birth? Like, we'll talk about it in a week when I'm home. Why is it now? I couldn't
Especially
even
the babies in the
I
NICU.
couldn't even comprehend that it was something that was being that they were talking about it at the fact that she had just given birth. Like she was still in her hospital gown. Come on.
In bed, in a hospital bed. And
Outrageous.
so that's what I'm talking about with demanding managers. and they're so frightened. I mean, it's like, how important can it be?
It cannot. And this is where my parents' story comes in. I was raised in a medical household. My mom was a nurse, my dad was a paramedic. Before that, like my life was around emergency services. My dad was in the Navy, he was flying around the world. And me as a person, I have high anxiety. Things I worry about go to like morbid situations in my head if someone doesn't show up on time. Like everything is really big for me. And so over time, they learned how to calm me and whatnot. But then getting into work and having to manage these things on my own, anger from being in the job would come home, or worry would come home, or I wouldn't even consider the opportunity of taking a day off because this was happening at work. And I remember my dad said to me once, there is no such thing as an accounting emergency because they lived in life and death. My parents lived in,
Yeah.
are you going to die? Then it's not that big of a deal. And I was like, whoa, thank you. And I have shared that story with so many people because it was so affirming to me in the moment where I was like, yeah, like this place is not going to close down because of me.
Right. There are very few things that, and I used when I was working at America Online, I know it's a long time ago, I was managing basically the promotions and the e-commerce activity on a channel, and I'd get phone calls in the middle of the night because the link was broken because I was working with partners, like,
Right.
so I might be working with some sort of partner and we were using their deal link or whatever that was. That I guess I can understand, but I didn't, I got interrupted quite a bit. And my boss back then, because I was like begging for some help because we had
Mhm.
lost a person, and we were going through reorg again. There was a new boss in charge of commerce. And so I was reporting directly to the head guy. And I said to him, I'm exhausted. I'm constantly being interrupted. I have no time off. Like I'm like constantly on call to fix these things. I said, I need help. I'd done 3,200 different promotions that year. You know what he said to me?
Mm,
This guy was really concerned always about his bonus.
mm,
He didn't want to manage people and, his ascension up the chain. He's changed a lot since then. He was young, right? Because I still know him, but he said, maybe you need to go to therapy.
That's right, that guy.
And I was like,
What?
no, we need help. I know you're trying to do the end of the year, budget, and it makes you look good, if your staff comes in under budget, but I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Well, and that's like another similar story that I've brought up before that transcends time was in the early 2000s, I worked for that telecommunications company and we had the two-way messaging system. And I was getting pages while I was at my grandfather's funeral. And this is where that same scenario from my dad comes in. There's no such thing as an office emergency. Like, there's got to be someone else in the chain that can take care of whatever the issue is. And if there isn't, that is not on you, that is on the organization.
Agreed. So that's an interesting. We're gonna talk about systems and stuff in a second, but that's a really really good point. And a lot of people will that are fearful of losing their job are afraid of having backup or being expendable. And so they operate in fear. They don't want to be laid off.
Yeah,
So they kind of like being in a position
yeah,
where somebody needs them.
right.
And, again, I'm generalizing. Not everybody's like
Right. But it's a
that,
very common scenario.
but it's a common scenario. And so, how do you deal with these kinds of situations? There are definitely times when you're working and you're short staffed, you have to cover for somebody. I was just talking to a company earlier today about something completely unrelated. Um, but she said, "Oh, we have a philosophy. We're a team here, and everybody supports everybody."
Hmm.
And in their industry, that's not really
Right.
common.
Right.
And I said, that's a really good thing to, sorry about that. It's a really good thing to operate under. And if you've engaged everybody, and people do want to be engaged, people for the most part want to do jobs, they want to
Well,
be
they want to
busy.
be needed. They want to be wanted.
Right. So how can you develop a team or a culture where it's teamwork
Hmm.
and everybody pitches in?
Yeah. I love the conversation of culture because it can be developed. It can be changed. Even if it's the most toxic culture, there can be an evolution. I don't feel like that it's a very rare occasion that something can't be better or evolve.
Hmm.
Because if you don't, you're going to die off. But like I love working on culture because it allows people to be impactful as an individual. It allows the evolution of an organization. I worked with a client recently that a lot of things were reliant on them as the owner, as the individual, as the say all. And we introduced the staff to decision making and inquiry and support and supporting each other. And over the last 6 months, it's evolved. And it wasn't horrible, but there was definitely backbiting, condescension. There was disrespect going on in the group to the owners and whatnot. And it's not
Why
100%.
was that? Why do you think that was going on, and how do you think
Well,
it
I know
evolved?
why it was going on. There was less presence of the owner in the space. So then it wasn't her controlling anything anymore. And it
Oh,
kind of got
so is it top
upheaval.
down thing?
It
It's a
was,
top
well,
down
it
thing?
was being managed at the top, and it was like being, there was everything was filtered through them. And so when they weren't there, there was upheaval. And so I came in to help them reset. And it was great within a couple of meetings that we were able to see. Even at the last meeting, it was so awesome that one of the people there shared what he had done on his own time, went and reorganized the entire space and labeled everything and made it so that it was more functional for everyone else because they gave them the autonomy to
Right.
change the culture within. They weren't
Yeah.
shoving things down. They were bringing everybody up together. And it showed immediately.
That's excellent. I mean, as you're talking and telling me about this, I think there's two, and uh, it's funny because, again, my favorite hero, Patrick Lencioni, he has the five dysfunctions of a team. And one of the things, and I think he talks about this in the five dysfunctions of a CEO, is also accountability,
Hmm.
but it's also trusting people to do their job and to make decisions. And leaders cannot do that all by themselves. That's
Right.
what causes burnout. But I think some people are so afraid of protecting their position, and
Right.
Patrick Lencioni talks about this, their position. It does become a cultural thing, and it becomes a
Hmm.
cultural thing from top down.
Hmm.
And, you know, I too am working with a smaller business right now, and it's lovely because um, it's smaller and it's led by, so being able to talk to the CEO, and well, it's a husband and wife that own the company, being able to talk to them is and say, hey, by the way, you have this really talented employee. And you said that there was some strife between this person and another employee. Why don't you take a look at it and see what's causing the strife and what's making him nervous? We had a whole conversation. This employee's newer. The other employee's been around longer. The other employee that's been around longer feels threatened. And the newer employee has some talents, and just needs to be nurtured and empowered.
Hmm.
And if you don't take the time to do that, then you break down the system.
Right. Yep.
So, it's easy. Easy is the wrong word, maybe. It's
It's a simple
certainly
thing. It's a simple thing, but it's not easy.
right. And this particular client, you tend to attract clients that, align with your ethos, right? She made a comment. She said, "Oh my gosh, okay, I see, what the challenge is and what I need to do with this newer employee who's very talented. I want him to stay." And because they own the company and that's her ethos, right? She wants everybody, and they depend on everybody for, and some people have to double up on jobs and whatnot, but they're a growing company and they know that they have to nurture the people that they have there and
Mm.
create a culture. And she's embraced that. That's what she's taken on. Her
Right.
her husband takes on the financial, and she's doing a bunch of other stuff. But um, so that it's super, super important, and that's why I love Patrick Lencioni so much in his books because he keeps it pretty simple. It's like usually 5 steps or 5 dysfunctions. So what
Hmm.
did you just say? It's
It's simple, but it's not easy.
but it's not easy. Yeah,
Right.
and a lot is the big ego.
Ego. Yeah.
But we digress. So what we were talking about is employee engagement, which has to do with culture,
Mhm.
has to do with morale, has to do with empowering people, but also not putting so much on their plate that they can't feel like they can't go to the hospital or
Yeah. Yeah, that is absurd. Like that scenario, I, that woman, if she stays working there, I don't know. There's no way that I would, after that scenario, I would not want to go back to that place. Because that is a horrible experience. Like, that was the birth of your child and it got interrupted by your work. Like, have some respect.
well, I think that's a generic issue in the States, like in Europe or, in other countries, that is, that they're given much more respect and kindness
I mean, I
when
hate to
they
play the
have
sexism card, but do you think if that were a man in that scenario that they would be even,
no,
that would never even happen?
no. I worked for a man, and I've worked for men and women, whatever, but he had a scenario. This was a colleague. He had a scenario where he had a family issue with the children that he had to go take care of, and there was an issue that came up at work. Do you think we bothered him?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And plenty of women do have boundaries, but more often than not, women are caregivers and they want to keep the peace and they want to make sure that they don't lose their job and they're more concerned about what they can do to fix the situation rather than focusing on their own need at the time. Like that company has survived decades before you were there. It will survive decades after you're gone. This time in your life is important, and it's where you should be having your focus, not on what TPS report is due, honestly.
Well, what about that story? I mean, this is completely off topic, but kind of on topic. Who's that guy? He was the longevity influencer, and he was aligned with Epstein or whatever. And there's a story that he said his child was sick and he was across the country, and instead of flying home to be with the child and his wife, he attended a business meeting. So, that's a personal choice.
Yeah, that's a choice, and that's like, you know, is it going to be a 12, like if you're across the world and it takes you 24 hours to get home, say you're in Australia, is attending this business meeting for an hour going to make a change to the scenario on the other side of the country? That's a personal choice. But when you're being invaded upon in the hospital, like Give me a break.
I know it was shocking to read that story.
There was
And
something I read
I
recently that said the culture of your company is defined by what your employees are thinking the night before on Sunday night, before going into the office on Monday. Are they dreading it? Are they planning ahead? Are they focused on their family? Like me, very often, and it's become a habit now, even though I'm not in corporate anymore, is I do planning on Sunday night. So because I
so do
knew
I.
my Monday was going to be nuts and it's going to be slammed by meetings first thing Monday morning and it's going to be fast and furious. And so I would, for many years, take Sunday night to plan what the week looked like, even catch up on stuff before that I let sit on Friday night. I couldn't even wait to get to Monday. I was already all weekend thinking about how can I get this done before it's needed? Like that was a personal choice, but it was instilled in by the organization. There was no one that said this is completely unnecessary or, I know that I was always trying to prove myself in my career. I spent a lot of energy basically going like, look over here, like I'm ready for a promotion and not visible. And so it was wasted energy. And so always makes me think of that thing on, on your deathbed, are you going to say you wish you worked more? Nope.
No, no. I'm gonna say I wish I visited that country. Although like in spirit I'll be flying around. Hey, I didn't see this country. I'll fly there in spirit. Um, so like we always like to give tips, and I have a good there's a really good quote from John Clifton, the CEO of um Gallup that put out this survey, and I didn't read the whole survey. I only read part of it, so we'll probably have more good content that came out of it. So we always like to give good tips to
Takeaway.
people.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of employee engagement, so you can either have too much pressure or you can't engage them enough. So, what are your tips in terms of the right balance, Heather? Do you have any? I'm going to put you
Um,
on the spot.
yeah, I mean, it's hard for me because I fell victim to overexerting and not setting boundaries. That's something I did my entire career was I lacked boundaries. I have much more confidence in my boundaries now. And like I said, all these things that I've been sharing are things that I've learned over time, but I'm just learning to instill and implement in my own career. Um, the biggest thing is I think culture starts not only in the organization, but with you, because you can make your own culture. You don't have to buy in to whatever negative vibe is there. You also are the one that determines whether you stay or not. But something that I did a lot in my career was I tried to set the tone. So I would see something that wasn't great and I'd make a recommendation on making it better. Or I'd find people to work on a project with me and say, let's be the starting point of this. Like there was a big thing in the last firm that I was in where there was so much different content across the organization where people had made their own programs for delivering proposals to clients. We brought it upon ourselves to create a standard. And we said, and we presented it. We presented a business case, and it made a role. It made an employment opportunity for people. People were able to go for that job as part of working at that company that didn't exist prior. So I think a lot of the culture that you experience is they say when people say something negative to you, it's because it's in them.
Oh, 100%. I just was telling somebody the other day that I've been coaching. I was like, that's their insecurity. And
Yeah.
as an energy coach, I talk about that all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I think you make a good point is that you can create your own culture, and ultimately it is up to you. Do you want to stay or do you want to leave? Now, sometimes, you have golden handcuffs and they don't want to leave, or there's lots that you do like it about it. Um, no, I think that's a good point is you can kind of create your own. your own atmosphere. And you do literally, like if you believe in auras and things, you do create your
Mhm.
own atmosphere. And if you like
Mhm.
what you're doing, you could certainly do that. Um, but I do think it starts with leadership. And I do think this is a good tip too, is know yourself and know what kind of person you can work for. Now, sometimes, because I've been in
Mhm.
companies where there's all these, reorgs and you're moved from somebody that you really got along with to
Yeah.
somebody you
Yeah.
don't. But I know from my perspective is that if I was working for a director, manager, or whatever, SVP doesn't matter, that had a good attitude about culture, especially on their team. Like the rest of the company could be a little bit difficult to work with. But if their team, they were creating a good culture, almost always they valued their team members. They knew that, and this is again a Patrick Lencioni thing, they knew they didn't have all the answers. They were good decision makers, they were pretty creative, and they were pretty good at getting people engaged in terms of, hey, we need to make a pivot, we need to change, we need to grow revenue, whatever it is, and engaging the right people to have that conversation. So they felt empowered and part of a solution. And it was fun.
Mhm.
It was fun to come to work and be
Yeah.
part of that. And it became less about, okay, how much am I getting paid? Because you
Right.
enjoyed the work. Not
Right.
to say it's not important to be paid what you're worth. That's not
Right.
what I'm
But
saying.
like there were scenarios where I had been in a job for however long looking for growth opportunities and decided maybe it was where I had reached the point where I'm like, all right, it's not, I'm gonna go look for another job. This is not where I want to be. And I would get a counter offer. And my response was, it's too late. I'm moving on. So it's not always about money. And
Right.
like you said, like the team culture really makes a difference. I think one of the biggest things in my career, one of the most impactful things to me was when diversity, equity, and inclusion was introduced. And it was not something that I understood when it first came to our organization. I was like, what is the point of this? But over time, I developed really strong relationships in those programs, in those different cultures within the culture of the organization. And I honestly think that's why I was there as long as I was, because I was so ingrained in these positive cultures within the organization.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's why there's management and leadership consulting. There's some big groups, that do that consulting.
Hmm.
But I think the challenge is that oftentimes people will attend those sessions, get through them, and then go right back to where they
And it's
used
the
to
same
be.
thing when you
That their
close the
bad
door.
habits, their bad
Yeah,
attitudes,
yeah,
really focusing on,
right.
their ego. And I just firmly believe that, I mean, this is my, again, philosophy as a human being, is that we're in this huge paradigm change
Hmm.
and cultural change as a collective. And if
Agreed.
I'm not going to go into a deep explanation of what collective is, that we could probably have a whole separate conversation about this. And there's tons of YouTube videos about this. That people want more out of life,
Hmm.
and they want to feel valued. They want to feel engaged.
Yeah.
Um, some people just want to go and do their job, and that's fine too.
Hmm.
They go do their job and they leave. They don't have to have a pat on the back or whatnot. But for the most part, we're dealing with other people, right? And if you don't want attrition, the pendulum swings both ways. We've had times where it's challenging to find people and you have to pay more for people.
Hmm.
But I think the Gallup poll survey is really interesting because it came out and it's still costing, even though AI, which I don't think it's the be all end all, it can't replace everybody. You still
Yeah.
have to have people. And I forget who it was said too, a company's in business to provide some sort of service or product to people.
Hmm.
You can't you can't completely cut people out of the equation.
Right.
So if you try to do that, again, we're gonna close out, but I'll give you another example. Personal example is, I think I talked about it before, but I have service contractors in the rental home I own, and I had one for years that service my home. I pay them, a monthly fee to maintain the home, and they got bought out by a big company. And lo and behold, the person that I used to speak to on the other end of the phone is gone,
Mm-hmm.
and they have an AI person answering the phones. And
Which
took me
isn't
three
even a
weeks,
person. They have
which isn't
AI.
even, yeah, which took me finally 3 weeks to get through to a technician to talk about what his recommendations were. 3 weeks. And there was work that needed to be done. I wanted to pay them more money. So
Hmm.
I got fed up and, you know, I'm, I found another company that the owners are involved
Because
still.
the
And when you
culture
pay,
changed.
well, no, I went to a different company. The first company lost my business
I
because
know,
I
because
can
they
talk,
switched away from the people, from,
right.
servicing their client through the culture.
I exactly. I can pick up the phone and I can talk to the woman on the other side who's very knowledgeable. So, you think that you can just have somebody do all this stuff, but you still need people there and the people need to be happy. And it's funny because this is a smaller company, right? Let's
Hmm.
talk about this. You could tell they have two people answering the phone, and I've talked to both of them, at least two that I've come across. You could tell they love their jobs.
Oh, that's cool.
You could tell they love their company, they love their jobs, and they love their bosses. And that came through
It does.
to the
I
customer.
remember that tech company I was telling you about that was paging me during the funeral. One of the tips that they had was we had to have a mirror on our cubicle wall so that when we were on calls with potential clients, cold calling, whatnot, that we would be smiling because it came through on the other side of the phone.
It's true.
Hmm.
It's true. So, anyways, I think it does start at the top. It's a cultural thing. Leadership and management can do a lot. And I think you made a really good point, Heather, that even if the larger culture in a larger company is not suited to you, you can create your own culture, especially in smaller teams, and you
Hmm.
can be a weight changer,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But if it's okay, I'll close out with this quote from John Clifton, who is the CEO of Gallup. And he says this, he says, AI could diminish engagement by severing the vital human bonds, friendships at work, a sense of being heard, and genuine care from colleagues. That keeps teams thriving. We stand at the edge we stand at the edge of a new era of work. With thoughtful leadership and strong empowered managers, AI can elevate human potential rather than reducing it.
Yeah. And, so many times we've heard people leave jobs because of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes down to culture. Like, have the right people in place of leadership in your organization, and people will stick around because it'll start to trickle. So one person leaves and it changes the culture of the group. And now you'll see a change in that team. And it's that way throughout the whole organization.
That's so true. I had a horses, and whenever you had a change in the herd, it
Hmm.
changed the entire herd
It
dynamic. And
does.
I think you made a really good point that that does the same thing for human beings
And it
too.
can do the reverse. Bring someone
Right.
in new and it can change the culture.
Right. Oh my gosh, we touched on so many different things here today, but so we'll probably have some follow-ups on this, but thank you so much for joining us. Write in. We need some people to write in some experiences. And until next time,
Stay unfiltered. We'll
see
see
you
you
later,
then.
Heather. That's it for this episode of Mondays Unfiltered. If something today made you laugh, think, cringe, or finally question the workplace norms you've been conditioned to accept, good. That's where change begins. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit subscribe, Share the episode with someone who deserves a better Monday and help us push the movement towards healthier, more human workplaces. And we want to hear your stories, the surprises, the successes, the dysfunction, the burnout, the breakthroughs. Just send them our way. Your experience might shape a future episode. And remember, we can do better, we can be better, and we don't have to tolerate BS just because it feels familiar. Until next week, stay curious, stay courageous, and stay unfiltered.